That's a good point. So anyway,
Thank you.
okay, all right. So I don't know how far you got, but the last word on Samach Vav, on Samach Zion Amid Beis is Mesve, right?
Today's Samach Ches.
You're Samach Ches, right? Today's Samach Ches. The last line on Samach Zion is Mesve.
Right.
So the Gemara is trying to establish what's more important, what's more severe, depending upon how far out the people have to be sent, depending on what's going on with them, whether they have what type of tumor they have. So Mesa, the Gemara asks, Boil Nida Kitame Mace. So somebody who had relations with a woman who was during her menstrual cycle, and that he says is equivalent to Tame Mace, somebody who came into contact with a corpse, Lamai. For what? For what ruling is that? Ilema Latumasam, if you're going to say that it's for their tuma, so Hai Tuma Shiva Ksive, Hai Tuma Shiva Ksive. So each of them have a 7-day tuma. Each one of them is coming for 7 days. And so it would seem like they are equivalent. So Elalav, no, he says Lamachanosam, for the would have to be sent out basically. Umida Seifa Lamachanosam, Haviresha Namina Lamachanosam. And since the ending part of our Mishnah talks about the camps that they have to be sent out from, so too it relates to the tuma that they have. So it's also, they say the tuma is equivalent. My area. So are the cases really comparable? Hakad they're actually they are different. So the issue of the person who is a tummy mace, he's got a 7-day tumah just like the Baal Nida, but he has to have the Hazar Shlosha third day and the 7th day, right? He has to have the water of the Paraduma sprinkled on him. So it's a little bit different. So Umay Chumra, and what is this stringency in terms of the person who's the Baal Nida? Kidamoran, just that we said. So we're saying that he is more secure, more severe, right, than the person who comes into contact with the corpse. So Mesve, let's go a little bit further. Mitzora Chomer Mizav. The Mitzora is more Chomer than a Zav. Mitzora is a person who is afflicted with, we call leprosy. It's not really leprosy, it's a skin condition, but that has more strict than a Zav. Why? The Zav Chomer Mitmei. So we're going through a whole hierarchy here. And a Zav is more strict than a Tamei Mace. Why? So why do we say the Mitzora and the Zav are more Chomer than a Tamei Mace? Because the Tamei Mace is from an external contact. He comes into contact with the mace, but the Zav and the Mitzora are basically from his own body, right? So Yotza Balkari should Tamei Mace Chomer Mimenu. So, but we're excluding the Balkari who is less Chomer than the Tamei Mace. So my Yotza, what do you mean? The Mishnah says Yotza. What does it mean at Yotza? Well, Yotza from what, right? Lav Yotza Meklal Zav Ubala Klal Tamei Mace. So we're saying that in the way that his tumah is resolved, he is not like a Zav, but he's more like a Tamei Mace. But Tamei Mace Chomer Mimenu Umutar B'Machne Levia. So, but wait a second, the Tamei Mace is more Chomer than the Balkari, and yet the Tamei Mace is permitted to go into the Machne Levia, whereas the Balkari is sent out of Machne Levia. So Gemara says, no, because that's not what we're talking about. Yotzami Machne Tamei Mace v'nichnas l'Machne Zav. So what is the Yotza? What is he being pushed out of? What does he have to leave? He has to be excluded from the person who is at the camp, the Machne of somebody who's Tamei Mace, but he enters the Machne of a person of a Zav. V'afagav the Tamei Mace Chomer Mimenu, even though, again, we said that Tamei Mace is more strict than the Balkari, right? So because the Mutar of Machne Levia, because the Tamei Mace can enter the Machne Levia, and so even though he can go in there and this Balkari cannot, this is Lamai Dedamile Midaminile. whatever we can find to compare him. So we use that to make a parallel between the two of them. So even though in a certain sense the tummy mace is stricter, but still in all in the sense that he goes into that other machana, they're similar. Tani Tana Kame Derav Yitzchak Bar Avdimi. So the Tana taught a Bryce. So that when they say Tana, that means a person who had the Bryces memorized and he repeated it over. So he said it before Rav Yitzchak Bar Avdimi. He said, "Yotza el mechutz lamachaneh." So when the pasuk says in Devarim that he has to go out of the machaneh, right? He says, "Zeu machaneh shechina." So what machaneh are we talking about here? We're talking about machaneh shechina. And then it says, "Lo yoval el tocha machaneh, zu machaneh levia." So we have the word machaneh in both cases. So the first pasuk is talking about machaneh shechina, and the second one machaneh levia, which is if they're arranged in in concentric circles, right? So the machaneh shechina is in the interior, and the machaneh levia is external to that. So he says, since the word machaneh is used in both places, one is referring to the shechina, machaneh shechina, one is to the location where the Leviim stay. So mikan lebal kerish yotza chutz l'shnei machanos, and since they're two psukim that relate to the bal keri, so we understand that he's got to go out of two machanos. So as opposed to, we just learned that the tummy mace can be a machaneh levia, but the bal keri cannot. Amar lei. So Rav Yitzchak said to the Tana who said over the Brisa, he said, "Akati lo ayalte afikte." Wait a second. This person, this he's a Yisrael, we're assuming, right? So who says he can go into machaneh levia at all? You're sending him out of machaneh levia. When did he get in there? Right? So you're sending him out. He's got to first come in, right? So lishnach rinach akate. So you have to understand it a different way. He says, "Lo pikte ayalte." You can't send him out until you let him come in. So el ema michutz lamachaneh zu machaneh levia. So where it says he's got to be out of the machaneh, that's the machaneh levia. Lo yovel tocha machaneh zu machaneh shechina. So in other words, he's got to be outside of the machaneh levia. He's also got to be outside of the machaneh shechina. Maskeh lo Ravina. So Ravina asked a question. Ema idi ve'idi l'machaneh shechina. So maybe both cases are talking about machaneh shechina. So forget about machaneh levia for the moment. V'lavor olav aseh v'lo saseh. So maybe the two psukim are coming to tell you that there are two types of violation here. He's got a lo saseh, which he has violated, and also an aseh. So, and therefore we have the two psukim, but each one serves a purpose. So im kain lema kra v'yotza el mechutz lamachaneh v'lo yovo lo tov. So why does the pasuk, if it's going to be a lo saseh, it should be worded like a lo saseh, right? Lo yovo, he should not come. So you're saying there are two psukim, and they both seem to be constructed as asays, and yet you're saying one is a lo saseh. The pasuk should have been worded. The language should have had the word lo in there, right? Because lo yovo. So once it says that hamachaneh lamali, so why do we need the repetition of the word hamachaneh? So shma mina litain lo machaneh acheres. That's to let you know that it's a second machaneh as well. So it's not just a machaneh shechina, it's also a machaneh levia in which this bal keri cannot. Okay, so that takes care of all the machanos.
5 minutes.
And now, did somebody have a question or just ordering coffee? No. Okay. So next it talks about that you could clean out the intestines, clean the inside of the animal. So, and that we know is something you're not allowed to do on Yom Tov or on Shabbos certainly, but on Yom Tov you're not allowed to do that in general. And yet here we're saying you're allowed to do it for this purpose. It says, "My michud krav." What does that mean? That you're cleaning out the inside of the animal. Rav Huna Mar shemenakvin b'sakin, menakvan b'sakin. He says that the inside the intestines of the animal, and if you listened to some nutritionists, somehow or other, we're always interested in that. And they say that inside your body, you have impacted waste material you never get rid of all of it. There's always some remaining in your body. And so here you have this animal that's been sacrificed. And so there's still some waste in the intestines of that animal. So what you have to do is you puncture the intestine and you squeeze it out. It's going to come out. So because you should not be, offering up that animal or roasting an animal with that in there. So Rav Chiya bar Rav Amar, Rav Chiya bar Rav says, Shir Kademeyeha, he said, what you do is you would put the knife onto the intestines and press on it. Because the pressure of the knife would force out whatever's in it. So they're both saying that you have to clean out what's there, because that's going to, the animal is dead. That's going to rot in there. That's going to destroy your korban pesach. So you have to get it out of there. So Amar Rabbi Eliezer. So Rabbi Eliezer says, my time of the Chiyad bar Rav. What is his reasoning that he says do it that way, not by puncturing, just like pressing on it? Is the Ksiv, because there's a pasuk from Yeshayahu, says v'charvos mechim garim yochelu. So he says that the destroyed part of the fat animals will be eaten by the garim, is the people who are strangers and wandering. They're going to eat those fat animals, the wreck of the fat animals. My mashma, kinemetargim Rav Yosef. What does this come to teach us? As Rav Yosef taught, v'nechsehen derishia tzadika yachsen. He says this pasuk. So yeah, the literally we can say that the destroyed carcasses, basically the strangers are going to eat them, but it also means that the property of the Rishayim, the tzaddikim are going to inherit that. They're going to wind up eating that, benefiting from that. So, okay, so this is a two-part pasuk. So we said the ro'u kvasim kedavram. So it also says in the pasuk, the beginning of the pasuk says that the lambs are going to eat, the kvasim are going to eat in the meadow, in the fields, or the pasture. Amar Menashe bar Yirmiyah Amarav. So Menashe bar Yirmiyah Amarav said, "Kamedu barbam," as it is said about those kvasim, the lambs. My kamedu barbam. What do you mean, as it says about them? Amar Abaye, b'charvos mechim garim yochelu. So Abaye says that the second part of the pasuk relates to the first part relates to the second part. So just it says they're going to be pasturing, they're going to eat there, and then the fat ones are going to die, and the other ones are going to come and eat from there. Amalei Rava says, Bishlama iksiv charvos, if it just said charvos, so without the vav, his kidamarta, I would understand that. Hashta diksiv vicharvos, but now so there's like two clauses in this pasuk, and the second clause begins with a vav, and we know vav comes as to add something, right? Vav is viv, and, right? So since it says Charbos, Rava says Milsaf Riti Kamar. So Rava says it's coming to teach us something else, not just that the first part relates to the second part. The pasuk is giving us more information. El Amar Rava. Rava says Kid Rav Hananel Amar Rav. He's according to what Rav Hananel. It said in the name of Rav. Amar Rav Hananel Amar Rav. Rav Hananel said in the name of Rav. Asidin Sadikim Sheyichayu Es Hamesim. So who's going to do the Tchiyas HaMesim? Who's actually going to make it happen, right? So, we somehow or other we picture that Hashem himself is going to do it, but Rav Hananel said in the name of Rav that in the future that tzaddikim themselves are actually going to accomplish this feat to restore people to life. So how do we know that? It says Ksiv Hafa. So in our pasuk, it says V'ro Kvasim Kidavram. It says that the lambs will graze in the pasture. Yuksiv Hasam Yiru Bashan V'Gilad Bimei Olam. So that word Yiru, right? So in our pasuk is V'ra'u, and in that other pasuk Micha, it says Yiru, so it's the same word. So Yiru Bashan v'Gilad b'mei olam. So Bashan and Gilad in the days of the future, in other words, the end of days, are going to pasture there. So what does that mean? He says Bashan ze Elisha haba min Bashan. So we know Elisha came from Bashan, and you know the famous story about Bashan, that he was Mechayim Mason, right? Bob, you know that story, right? With Elisha with the Shunamis, and he lay on the boy and he brought him back to life, right? Shenemar vayane v'shafat babashan. So this pasuk refers to Elisha, that he came from Bashan. Uksiv po Elisha ben Shafat asher yotzak mayim al yedei Eliyahu. So he says that Elisha, who he served Eliyahu, right? He washed his hands. He poured water onto the hands of Eliyahu. So we know that Bashan relates to Elisha. Gilad's Eliyahu. So Gilad is Eliyahu. Shenemar, but the pasuk says, "Vayomer Eliyahu atishbi mitoshvei Gilad." So we call Eliyahu atishbi, but he's one of those people who lived in Gilad. So we say that Elisha and Eliyahu are going to be Mechayim Mason. One comes from Bashan, one's from Gilad. So what is so we know the case is that Elisha brought back the daughter of the Shunamis, and Eliyahu also with the famous case with where he was Mechayim Mason as well. So Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonasan. So Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said name Rabbi Yonasan, Asidim tzadikim sheychayim Mason. So he says he's going to give us another source for this opinion of his. It's more than an opinion. It's his belief that the tzaddikim will be the ones to effect the resurrection of the dead. Seshnemar od yesh v'zakenim v'zakenos v'rchovos Yerushalayim. So the old people, old men and old women, will be sitting in the streets of Yerushalayim. V'ish mishanto biyado, and the man will have his cane, right, which he rests on, he leans on it. Meirov yomim, from many days. Uksiv v'samta mishanto al pnei hanar. And then you say that you're going to put the mishanto means his rod, his staff, his stick, whatever, you're going to put it on the face of the young child, right? So that's to indicate that just like Elisha used his staff when he was Mechai, the boy, the son of the Shunamis. So this pasuk is alluding to that type of thing that's going to happen in Yerushalayim, where the old people, the old men and the old women, were going to come back to life.
Shesla, not green. That's mine or yours?
Yours.
Oh no, someone's talking. Okay, Mesve. Okay, so a challenge is raised. Mitzorah Chomer Mizav. So we say that Mitzorah is stricter than a Zav. The Zav Chomer B'tamei Meis. So I'm on the wrong way. Wrong book here. Okay, Ula. So Ula had a question about. We're talking about the time of Chiyas HaMesim. So he asked the question: "See, Bila Hamavis Lenetzach." Right, we say that at funerals, Bila Hamavis Lenetzach, right, and there should be no tears on the face of the person, right? Uksiv Kihanar Ben Mea Shana Yamus, and we say that the one pasuk says Bila Hamavis Lenetzach, so that there should be no death in the future, right? And then it says that here's a young boy who's 100 years old. So that seems kind of odd, right? His lo kasha, kan b'Yisrael, kan b'goyim. He says that in one case it's talking about the Jews, that they're not going to be dying at all. Once in the end of days there will be no death apparently, but the goyim will die. So wait a second. The Gemara asks, the goyim my bo Hassan. What do the goyim have to do with Yemos HaMashiach? You know, are the goyim going to be around then as well? So it says, "Diksiv amdu zarim So yeah, we're going to need the goyim, right? Because we're going to be sitting and learning a whole day long, right? Who's going to take care of the work, right? Who's going to take care of the sheep, and who's going to do the farming of the vineyards? So we're going to need goyim for that purpose. So there'll be some goyim around apparently at that time. So Rav Chisda said, he asks a question. He says, wait a second. He says, Ksiv v'charfa halavana ubosha hachama. So furthering the discussion about the Yemosa Mashiach and the Olam Haba, basically, he says that the moon will be basically embarrassed. It'll cover its face, right? And the sun will also be ashamed. So that would indicate that they're not going to give off any light, right? Because they're covering themselves. So and there's that famous medrash that the moon and the sun were originally the same size. So now we're saying that the light of the sun and the light of the moon will be equivalent, and orachama yeshivasayim gar shivasayamim, and the light of the sun will be 7 times as bright as the light that was created in the 7 days of creation. So wait a second. First, you're saying to me that they're going to be covered, so they're not going to emit any light. And now the other pasuk says that they're going to be very bright. So lokasha, kan olam haba, kan li mosa Mashiach. So what he's saying is not that it's going to be dark ever, but what they're saying is olam haba, we're not going to need the sun and the moon. Why? Because we're going to have the radiance and the light of the Shekhinah itself. So that's going to provide light for us at that time. Yemosa Mashiach, on the other hand, in that time, we're still going to need light because we're going to apparently be here on earth at that time and still living. So we're going to need the light of the sun and the moon. So wait a second. Shmuel, so how about Shmuel, who said, Amar ein bein olam hazeh Yemosa Mashiach, ela shibud malchios bivad. So Shmuel says that the only difference between olam hazeh and Yemosa Mashiach is that we're no longer going to be subject to the rule of foreign kings. So basically, we're going to be free in Yemosa Mashiach. That's it. That's the only difference. So according to Shmuel, Ma'ikil Meimar, so then what's going to be the situation with the light of the sun and the moon? He's the Idi Olam Haba. No, they both talk about Olam Haba, not talking about Yemosa Mashiach. Below Kasha. And it's not a contradiction. Kamba Machane Shechina, Kamba Machane Tzadikim. So he says that one where the light of the sun and the moon will be covered up and you won't need them, that's when you're going to be close to the Shekhinah. And the other part where the light of the sun and the moon are very bright, that's where you're going to be in the Machane, in the camp, or where the Tzadikim are standing. So wait a second. So Rava Amar Ksiv Ani Omis V'Achayeh. So we just said that that Hashem, there's a pasuk that says that Hashem, I put to death and I bring back to life. Ksiv Machatzi V'Ani Erpa. So I hurt people, I wounded them, I damaged them. V'Ani Erpa. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about bringing people back to life or healing people who have been injured? So if a person is in a car accident and he gets injured and he dies, Hashem brings him back to life. Didn't he cure the wound also? So why do we need 2 psukim to tell me that Hashem is going to heal the wound? Obviously, if the person is going to come back to life, those injuries he had are going to be repaired, right? El Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ma sheni memis ani mechaya. That which I put to death, I will bring back, I'll restore to life. Kemoshe machatzti v'ani erpa. Just as I can heal those that have been wounded. And of course, this is a very good question to people who believe in evolution. And Rabbi Miller said, why is it that if you are walking along and you cut your leg, you walk past the fence, there's a nail sticking out, and you tear your pants and you cut into your skin with that nail, your trousers will not heal themselves, and the trousers are much less complex than the human body, and yet the human body is going to heal. So why is that? Why is it that when the first animal or first person got injured, he didn't just bleed to death? Well, how did it happen? That somehow by accident we healed ourselves? So anyway, that's just a parenthetic statement. But basically, Hashem, just as I can heal wounds, I can bring back the dead to life as well. Tana Rabbanan. So in the Brisa we learn, I will put to death and I will restore to life. No way. So maybe one person is going to die, one person is going to be alive, the way that the world is accustomed to functioning. So he says, that's why we need the word malchasti, because it's saying not only will I heal those that have died, but I will also heal the wounds of those who have been hurt. Just as we're talking about the same person who got injured is also going to be healed. So too, a person who passed away is also, that same person is going to come back to life. So in other words, we're not saying that some are going to remain dead and Hashem won't restore them to life. Everybody that Hashem put to death will eventually. And this pasuk, since this is a pasuk in the Torah, so that's to let you know that Chiyas HaMesim is from the Torah. So you can find a Torah source for the Chiyas HaMesim. Dovar Acher, another way of looking at it, so just as those that I put to death, I will bring back to life. And then also that so in our friend who was killed in a car accident, first Hashem is going to bring him back to life, and then he's going to heal the injuries. So it could be a two-step process in some cases. So I guess the person who died of just a natural death, he's going to come back to life, and that's it. But somebody that has injuries, those injuries will be cured as a second step in the process. Okay, now going to Amud Beis. So we're continuing on those items that are doche Shabbos in regard to the Korban Pesach. So the hektar halava. So we said that the fats, right, part of the Korban Pesach, have to be burned on the mizbech. So if Erev Pesach comes out on a Shabbos, so we know that you can slaughter the animal, and we know that you can roast it on Shabbos, right? But how about putting the fats on there? And this is kind of a chiddush, isn't it? Because why is it necessary? Couldn't that wait until Moshe Shabbos? But we do bring them on Shabbos, because Tanya Amar Rabbi Shimon, Borei Kama Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shata. Come and look how cherished, how valuable to people is a mitzvah which is done in its time. Right? It's time to burn the fats. The Jews are not fooling around. They want to burn the fats right now. You can do it all night long. There's no rush. There's no obligation to burn it immediately, and yet we do burn the fats and the entrails on Shabbos. But they don't wait. So we're showing here that the mitzvah is valuable, and we love the mitzvah, and we're going to do it even though it's Shabbos, and you're permitted to do it. So now the question that was raised about those items which could be done before Shabbos, right? Like it's the famous case of a bris milah, right? Baby's born on Shabbos, so you make his bris on Shabbos. But the question is, suppose the moil forgot to bring the knife on Friday. Is he allowed to bring the knife, right? Because he could have brought it before. So Rabbi Kiva in that case says no, it's he should have brought it before. So it's a problem. So we have the same situation here where the shochet is going to be shechted in the Korban Pesach on Shabbos, which he's allowed to do. But how about, is he allowed to bring in the knife that he's going to be using to shech that Korban Pesach on Shabbos? So so here we go, another situation in Masechta Eruvin, where we say if you have an animal that has to be brought as a sacrifice, and before they slaughter, they discover it has a boil or a wart or something on the skin of the animal. That's a mum, but it's not a permanent mum, and it can be removed, right? Certain mumim you cannot remove on, and the animal is disqualified. But this wart you can cut it off. But suppose it's on Shabbos. Are you allowed to do that on Shabbos? So it says Chodchin Yabelis b'Mikdash Avalaba Medina. You can cut it off. You actually can cut off the wart of it. If you have an animal which will be offered as a sacrifice, you can remove this wart on its skin in the Mikdash, but not in the rest of Eretz Yisrael. Vimbakli kan v'kan. However, you can't do it using a keli. So you can use, I guess, your fingernail to try to scrape this off, to remove this wart from the skin of the animal. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi ben Bar Chanina. So it's a machlokas between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina. Chad Amar, one says, so idi ve'idi biyad. So in both cases, we're talking about doing it by hand. So he says that you can't do it by hand even outside the Beis HaMikdash. And in the Mikdash, you can do it by hand. And the other one says, one is when this wart is moist, it's wet, and the other one says it's dried up, because if it's dried up, it just comes off very easily. So that's different than trying to cut off a wet one. The Chad Amar, and the other one says idi balacha. He says, no, they're both talking about a wet one. V'lo kasha haba yad haba kli. So he says that when you're talking about the even in the mikdash, it's a wet one, and one is the one is by hand and one is with a keli. So with a keli, you're not allowed to do it even in the mikdash, but if it's a wet one, you can remove it in the mikdash, but you can do it using your fingernail. So, and according to the one who says that the Mishnah is talking about by hand, and the other Mishnah in the other Masechta is talking about using a knife or something like that to cut off this wart. He says, so why didn't he say that they're just talking about doing it by hand? Why does he have to introduce the idea of using a keli to do it? He's lo kasha. So why is he saying one is talking about a wet one, one's a dry one? Either way, you could remove the wet one by hand as well. A dry one doesn't even necessarily require cutting, because if you just like pinch it or squeeze it, it's probably going to crumble and fall off by itself. So you're not even cutting it in that case. So he will accept doing that because you're not even necessarily cutting something. It just crumbles. And to the one who says that in our Mishnah and the other Mishnah, it's also talking about removing it by hand. So he says that even removing by hand, you can't remove it outside of the Beis HaMikdash. He's lo kasha. One is talking about a wet one, one's talking about a dry one. So my time with Lomar idi v'idi balacha. And why didn't he just say that they're both talking about a wet one? So the wet one in the Mikdash and the wet one outside the Mikdash. Lo kasha haba yad haba kli. So, and he says one is talking about doing it by hand, and one is talking about using a knife or a keli. Amar lach, he could say, kli hakatani hasam imbekli kan v'kan aser. He says if you're going to introduce the issue of using a keli, using an implement to remove that, he said in both cases you're not permitted to remove it with a keli, even in the mikdash, according to him. V'idaf. And the other one, so why do we need both Mishnayos? If we're going to say that the practice is the same, whether in the Mishkan, not in the Mishkan, and it's in both cases, it's a wet one, and so one is with a keli, one is not. Why do we need both Mishnayos then? It says, ha-dekatani kli hacha. So here it talks about using a keli, because it's coming to teach us, because Plukta Rabbi Eliezer Yeshua, it's coming to teach us a different machlokas. That Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua have different machlokas because we learned Amar Rabbi Eliezer Amoim Shchita. So Rabbi Eliezer says that since Shchita, which is normally forbidden on Shabbos, right, not allowed to kill on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, and yet we're allowed to do it for the purpose of Korban Pesach. So therefore, he says that in terms of the of other activities for that you can do on Yom Tov, where one says that you have to do only those things that are required for the Yom Tov, and one says you can do other things which are optional. He says Rabbi Yeshua l'tamei. Rabbi Yeshua is consistent. Amar Simchas Yom Tov nami mitzvahi. Oh, so normally he would say to bring the sacrifice, that's one thing, but cooking the meal, to eat the meal, why are you allowed to do that on Yom Tov, right? Why are you allowed to do that? He said because Simchas Mitzvah is a mitzvah too. Simchas Yom Tov, that's a mitzvah. So you're doing it for a mitzvah. It's not that you're doing it for your own purpose. It's a mitzvah. So the Sanya, Rabbi Eliezer says, "Ein lo la'adam b'yom tov, elo o ochel v'shose o yosef v'shana." He says, wait a second. He says that Rabbi Eliezer says a person on Yom Tov can eat on Yom Tov and drink on Yom Tov, or he can just sit and learn the whole day. So it's not required, according to Rabbi Eliezer, he's not required to eat. And therefore, cooking the meal on Yom Tov would not be, according to him, permitted. Rabbi Yeshua says, wait a second. He said, yeah, you should sit and learn, but chalkeu, divide the day. Chetzio lachila v'shesiya, v'chetzio lebeis hamidrash. So one half of the day you're going to be eating and drinking, and the other half, which is a mitzvah, and the other half you're going to spend the day learning. So you can do both. You can sit and learn, and you can eat, and each one of them is a mitzvah. And therefore, according to him, you're permitted, not only permitted, you're probably obligated to cook on Yom Tov for that purpose. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan. And further, Rabbi Yochanan said, "Ushnei mikra echadorshu," and yet they both get their source for their opinion from the same pasuk, because the pasuk says, "Atzeres l'Hashem elokecha." So it says that in terms of Shavuos, that Shavuos is for Hashem, your God. So v'kasav echad omer, and there's another pasuk that says, "Atzeres tiyeh lachem." So what is it? Is Atzeres for Hashem, or is Atzeres for you? Right? So Rabbi Eliezer Savar, O kula Hashem, O kula lachem. He says either way. He says either it's all for Hashem or it's all for you. So basically, I guess he's saying you have a choice. You could do one or the other. Rabbi Yeshua Savar chalkei. Rabbi Yeshua says you have to divide it in half. We have two psukim: chetzio Hashem, chetzio lachem. So you can, according to Rabbi Yeshua, you can sit and learn on Yom Tov, which means obviously you probably should be sitting and learning on Yom Tov, and also you should spend your time in eating Yom Tov meals. Amar Rabbi Elazar, I'm going to just skip the mnemonic. So Amar Rabbi Elazar says, Hakol moedim batzeres tebeina nami lachem. Everybody agrees that on Shavuos that it's a mitzvah to eat and drink. Lachem, it's for yourself. My time Yom shenitna bo Torahu. So because it says that's the day when the Torah was given. Amar Rabba hakol modim b'Shabbos ve'ina nami lachem, and everybody agrees that on Shabbos also there is lachem. My time why v'karasel Shabbos oneg, right? So it's a mitzvah on Shabbos to enjoy the day, right? So you call Shabbos oneg. Amar Rabbi Yosef hakol modim b'Purim. So Rabbi Yosef introduces a new day. He says everybody agrees that on Purim, the Ve'ina Nami Lachem, that you're supposed to enjoy Purim. So my time, why? Because you may mishtav simcha. So in the Megillah it says that Purim and Shushan Purim also were days of mishtav simcha. That those are days when you're supposed to have a big party and enjoy it, which is going to be hard for us this year because why? Because Purim comes out on Erev Shabbos. So it's going to be special dinim this year on the Sudas Purim, right? Because you're not supposed to eat a big meal after Chatzos on Shabbos. So that means you're going to have a festive brunch, I guess, on Purim this year. So Mar Bereda Ravina, Kula Shata Havayasa Betanisa. So Mar Bereda Ravina would fast every day. He fasts the entire year, except Lavar Mi Atzarta, Lupuria Amala Yoma de Kippurim. And 3 days out of the year, he would eat. What were the 3 days? He would eat on Shavuos, he would eat on Purim, and he would eat Erev Yom Kippur. So why? What was his reasoning that he allowed himself those 3 days to eat? Atzeres Yom Shnitna Bo Torah, because on Shavuos the Torah was given that day, and therefore he said it's a mitzvah to be happy on that day because the Torah was given. Puria on Purim, because it says clearly in the Megillah Yom Yemei Mishnah V'Simcha. So it says that these are days when you're supposed to eat, and it's a day of Mishnah and joy, right? And Erev Yom Kippur, this one is a little more interesting in a sense, because it says Mali Yom Kippura, Erev Yom Kippur, the Tani Chia Barav Midifti, because Chia Barav Midifti said, V'nisem esnav shosechem b'tisha lachodesh. Wait a second. Yom Kippur comes out on the 10th of Tishrei, right? And yet the pasuk says you should inisa means torture, or you should suffer your soul on the 9th of the day of the month. So v'ki v'tisha nisanim. Do we fast on the 9th of Tishrei? Not in my house, we don't, right? Hala basiri masana. We fast on the 10th. Yom Kippur is the 10th. El aloma lacha. That's to teach you. Kala ochla v'shosa b'tisha bo. So everybody who eats and drinks on the 9th of Tishrei, Mala Lakasav Kilu Masana Tishi Vasiri. So the pasuk gives him credit as if he fasted on both days. So it's a mitzvah to eat on the 9th of Tishrei, and therefore Mar Bereda Ravina would eat that day as well. Rav Yosef B'Yoma D'Artzata Amar. So Rav Yosef on Shavuos would say, Avdili Egla Tilsa. He says, bring me a Egla Tilsa, means a fatted calf, or a calf in a third of its life. But basically, it's a very special calf. You'd say, bring me, some would say it's veal, whatever. So Amar Elo Hayoma Dekagarim. So if not for this day that the Torah was given, so Kama Yosef Ika Bashuka, because he's saying because of the fact that he is a Torah scholar, so people know him by his name Rav Yosef. But if not for the fact that Shavuos was the day the Torah was given, so it gave him an opportunity to become the scholar that he became. So he's basically saying that's his own personal holiday, because it elevated him above the other Yosefs that are out there in the marketplace. So he would celebrate by having an Egla Tilsa. Rav Sheshis Kol Tlasin Yomin Mahadile Talmude. So Rav Sheshis would review all of his learning every month, every 30 days, whatever he learned during that 30 days. V'tali v'koi be'ivra dedasha v'amar, and he would stand against the lock on the door. He would say, Chadoi nafshoi, Chadoi nafshoi. He said, my soul should be happy, because lecha lach tanoi. And he said, because I've studied the Mishnah, right? Tanoi is that which is written by the Mishnah. And by the way, a commercial Mishnah Yomis every day, 15 minutes before Mincha, in Zoom and in person. So the Gemara says, Aini, he said, is that so? He said that it's only that Torah study is only good for the person who studied. In other words, it's only beneficial if you've already studied. It's good to review. He's Amar Rabbi Elazar, Emoli Torah lonis kaimu shamayim va'aretz. If not for the study of Torah, the world will not exist, right? And Rav Steinsaltz says that communities are supported by the people who study the Gemara within them. So those of us that are studying, everybody else who is out walking or riding their bikes or whatever they're doing, we're sustaining them right now. So they need to be grateful for what we're doing for them. Shneimar, because the pasuk says, "Im lo brisi yomam v'layla, chukos shamayim v'aretz lo samti." He said, if not for the fact that there are the Torah laws and they're done day and night, right? So the world, I would not have placed the world, right? So mikara ki avid inish. So when a person does this mitzvah, right, to study Torah, adate nafshik of it, he should have in mind that he, by this act that he's doing, he's sustaining the entire world. So that's a pretty heavy responsibility on us, and we take it on gladly. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, "Ulamai de Kamar Rabbi Eliezer Nami Yom Tov Rishus." So Rabbi Eliezer says Yom Tov is that you're allowed to do these things even if it's just Rishus, right? Because one says that it's a mitzvah, and Rabbi Eliezer says it's basically a Rishus to eat the meal. So Islay Pircha, I can disprove that, because my Yom Tov shehitir bo malacha shel Rishus lo hiter shvus she'ima. So certain things that are permitted on Yom Tov, which are forbidden by the Torah, and yet we're allowed to do them. But there's certain things that are shvus, we can't do them on Yom Tov. So those rabbinic restrictions still remain. Shabbos lo hiter bo ela malacha shel mitzvah. Shabbos, we only are allowed to do those things which are a mitzvah on Shabbos. Eino din shelo tate shvus she'ima. So too, we should not be permitted to allow the shvus, and yet we know that there are certain ones of those. So, and just to finish up, Rabbi Eliezer shvus the mitzvah adivle. So he says, for the sake of a mitzvah, Rabbi Eliezer agrees that shvus can be removed, but just for the sake of something which was shvus, he does not permit it, and we will continue.